Thank you. So, welcome everyone to this new, exciting online series, Closer Look Conversations with a Curator, hosted by the University of Reading Art Collection. My name is Hannah Lyons, and I am the Curator of Art, and also the first speaker in this new series. I am also joined tonight by Marcel Hirschman, our British Sign Language translator, who is doing important work translating our talk this evening for our deaf communities. We wanted to launch these talks with expert curators, conservators, and scholars in order to share with the public some of the wonderful artistic treasures that the university holds. Over the course of 30 minutes, our speakers will deep dive into the lives of individual artists and artworks in the University of Reading Art Collection, providing an opportunity in this fast-paced world to slow down, look closely at these artworks, and think about the creative lives of artists both past and present. Before we begin, I want to introduce you to the art collection, especially to those of you who have not heard of us before. The University of Reading Art Collection cares for around 1,500 works of painting, drawing, sculpture, graphic and digital art, including many pieces of national and international significance. We exist to collect, care for, interpret, and make these works of art publicly accessible for exhibition and enjoyment, teaching and research. And we hope to use our collection to enrich the lives of students, staff, and also the general public. We are based at St Andrew's Hall, which you can see on your screen here, and we are part of the University of Reading's Museums and Special Collections Services. But where can you see our artworks? We have publicly accessible exhibitions at St Andrew's Hall, and many of our artworks are available to the public in various locations around the University of Reading. You can also book an appointment to view our art collection in the study room, also seen here on your screen. And for more information on public access, including opening times and maps, please see the link that my wonderful colleague Claire will now post in the chat. So, back to tonight's talk. Over the course of the next 30 minutes, I will introduce you to the overlooked British artist, Minnie Jane Hardman, who lived and worked in London in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. The University of Reading has the only corpus of her works in a public collection. And given that some of her drawings are currently on loan to Tate Britain's groundbreaking Now You See Us Women Artists in Britain exhibition, we thought she would be an apt artist on which to kick off this series. So, as I said, I'll be talking for 30 minutes, and then there will be some time for questions at the end. Please do post your questions in the chat as we go along, and I will try to address them at the end of this talk. Finally, as you all will have heard, this talk is going to be recorded and made available afterwards on our YouTube channel. So thank you all in advance for joining us for our first talk this evening. Let's begin. On the 13th of March 1883, the 20-year-old Minnie Jane Hardman, who was born Minnie Jane Shoebrook, formally enrolled at the Royal Academy Schools in London. And just to note that henceforth I'll be referring to the Royal Academy Schools as the RA for brevity. Ascending the steps to Burlington House in Piccadilly, where the RA schools remain to this day, Hardman must have felt a twinge of pride mixed with nervous excitement. She was about to begin a free 7-year course at London's oldest and most prestigious art school, a school that had only begun admitting female students a generation earlier in 1860. In 2023, 140 years after Minnie Jane Hardman first enrolled at the RA schools, I started my job as curator of the art collection. It was during my first few weeks of sifting through prints and drawings in our art study room that I encountered her work for the first time. Having researched the lives and output of historic British women artists for my doctoral research, I was broadly familiar with the names of many women artists working in London in this period. But when I came across Hardman's drawings, some of which she signed with her maiden name, the name didn't ring any bells. After carefully working through the University of Reading's collection of 125 drawings by Minnie Jane Hardman, I was astonished and keen to know more. Who was this talented artist? How did she learn to make such technically sophisticated drawings? And what was life like for a young woman trying to carve out a professional artistic career in the late 19th century, when many believed that women lacked the capacity for creativity and invention? Finally, I was especially keen to know why this collection was here, in rather remarkable condition, at the University of Reading. I'll start addressing this latter question now. Constituting drawings made after antique sculptures, anatomical drawings, and drawings made from the life, studies in perspective, and landscape sketches, the University of Reading's Hardman collection is remarkable for several important reasons. Firstly, as I'm sure you will agree, these drawings demonstrate the quality of Hardman's draftsmanship. Despite the ongoing scholarly reassessment of work by extremely talented women artists, there are still some critics, collectors, and connoisseurs who insidiously suggest that the work of women is second-rate to their male counterparts. The work of women is charming, graceful, and gentle, all qualities that women themselves were expected to possess. I think Hardman's drawings, particularly the ones you can see on your screen now, rebuff this misogynistic conception. Secondly, drawings of this kind, covering almost every aspect of academic training in the RA schools, are extremely rare. The RA did not routinely collect its students' work, and the school's drawings were often lost or discarded by the students themselves. These drawings therefore provide an important insight into 19th century formal art teaching, and in particular the practice of female students, that cannot be gleaned from school reports and rulebooks alone. But how did these artworks arrive in Reading? Unfortunately, the origins of the Hardman collection are not fully documented. It is believed that the donation was made by the family to the university's History of Art department around 1992. The school's leadership thought that they would sit well alongside the university's celebrated Master Drawings collection, which had been collected by fine art professors and primarily used for teaching students. In 2015, the Hardman and the Master Drawings collections both became part of the University of Reading's art collection when it was formalised that year. Cataloguing began almost immediately, and thanks to generous support from the Tabalotza Foundation in Germany, Hardman's drawings were conserved and rehoused in appropriate conservation boxes and frames. On the screen is our very glamorous art and collections manager, Claire, showing how the Hardman collection was managed, cared for, and displayed appropriately. In December 2019, my predecessor, Dr. Naomi Liebens, organised for a selection of the drawings to be temporarily displayed at Hardman's alma mater, in an area known as the Schools Corridor. And as I have mentioned, this month we are delighted that 3 of Hardman's drawings are on display at Tate Britain's Now You See Us exhibition. As the curators of that show have demonstrated, and as I will go on to explain in further detail in this talk, Hardman's rare and remarkable drawings deserve the attention of a wider public. So now let's turn to Minnie Jane Hardman's biography. Recent scholarly research has emphasised that large numbers of historic women artists were born into an artistic family or trained by male relatives. This is the case with Minnie Jane Hardman. Her father was the wood engraver Louis Charles Shoebrook. About her mother, Jane Shoebrook, unfortunately, we do not at present have much information. A newspaper article of 1890, preserved by Minnie Jane in a book of press cuttings, reveals that her father taught her how to engrave upon wood when she was still quite a child. Both Minnie Jane and her sister Emma Louise became artists. So too did another relative, Laura Ann Shoebrook, an assumed cousin. What has proved confusing earlier on in the genealogical research was that Minnie Jane and Emma Louise both later became Hardmans after marrying into the same family of frame makers, gilders, artists, and painters, although Minnie Jane's husband appeared to be an outlier, working as a shipping clerk. But back to 1883, before her marriage. Prior to her admission at the RA schools in 1883, Hardman had studied in her late teens at the Islington School of Art under the tutelage of the Jersey-born artist and RA alumnus, Henry Thomas Baudet, who is primarily known today for his designs for stained glass, as seen in this image of the Great West Window of Hexham Abbey in Northumberland. At Islington School of Art, Hardman showed much promise. She won a third grade prize for this drawing, as evidenced by the label in the bottom left corner, which dates from 1881, indicating that the artist was just 18 years old when she made this work. If we look closer at the unknown, melancholic, bushy-bearded older man, we can see he has a slightly furrowed brow. His thick eyebrows, where Hardman has captured the wispy stray hairs in minute detail, are pulled together as if he is contemplating or observing something outside of the picture frame. Diffused light illuminates his forehead, and above it, his mass of grey and white curls. The grainy, velvety qualities of Hardman's highly finished drawing indicate that it was rendered in charcoal and graphite, a typical choice for students at art school in the 19th century. The same year that Hardman created this work, her tutor, Henry Baudet, recommended her to the prestigious Royal Academy schools. Founded in 1969, the RA was the gatekeeper of fine, or what we might call academic, art. Their schools offered a 7-year course of free tuition from leading artists, free entry to exhibitions, the opportunity to win medals, as well as significant artistic cachet to those artists who passed the rigorous admissions tests. But what was Hardman required to do to gain a coveted place at this most respected of historic art schools? Well, application to the RA schools was understandably thorough, and there was a multi-stage application process, which, having been through it himself, Henry Baudet likely encouraged and supported Hardman through. First, she had to submit a finished drawing about 2 feet high of an undraped antique statue for the approval of the keeper of the RA schools, the history painter Frederick Pickersgill. Ancient Greek and Roman sculpture was considered the foundation of high art in Europe in the 19th century, and it was important for prospective students to be able to demonstrate a familiarity with antique statues. As we will explore in greater detail later in this talk, drawing antique sculpture was also one way in which artists would learn to draw the human figure. And we must bear in mind throughout this talk that mastering the human figure was seen as absolutely essential for any serious artist in this period. Frederick Pickersgill's endorsement led to the next probationary stage of the application process. For this, Hardman had 3 months to produce a set of drawings from the RA's collection of the undraped antique statue, together with an outline drawing or drawings of the same figure anatomized, showing the bones and muscles contained therein. For this important part of her application, Hardman chose this plaster cast of Discobobolus as her model. The cast was made after a Roman copy of an original bronze Greek sculpture, which was found in the ruins of the Roman villa on the Appian Way in 1792. The original has been attributed to the Greek sculptor Narcides of Argos, and dates to around 400 BC. It is now in the collection of the Vatican. Here are the astonishing drawings that Hardman produced after the cast of Discobolus. We can see in this anatomized series that she has traced the outline of the figure, and in the left and centre drawings has filled them in with imagined musculature and skeletons, the elements of which are numbered and identified in the lists to the right. In the drawing on the right, Hardman has used a cylindrical drawing tool called a stump to painstakingly blend the graphite surface, creating, as I'm sure you'll agree, a spectacularly smooth and precise drawing. If you look closely at the top right of the left and centre drawings, you can see that there are traces of labels which state examined school works, revealing that they were approved by Pickersgill and the RA Council. Now, you may be thinking, why were prospective students required to anatomise sculpture? After all, it may seem like a rather odd practice, given that the exterior of a sculpture could be considered the most important element. However, the anatomisation of sculpture had been an integral part of the curriculum in artists' academies for centuries. And given that the RA was based on its European counterparts, they also adopted this practice when they were established in 1768. From the beginning, professors of anatomy were appointed from the medical world, and in the absence of actual bodies to dissect, which they did use when possible, they used a combination of illustrated books and three-dimensional models of flayed corpses called écorchés, as you can see on the screen here. When Hardman was eventually admitted to the RA schools in 1883, she was one of only 12 women admitted that year. Coinciding with broader societal campaigns for women's equal rights to work and education, the RA schools were only open to women from 1860, when Laura Hereford became the first woman to be accidentally admitted. Hereford secured admission to the RA schools by submitting an application under her initials. The male-only committee had presumed she was a man and could not refuse her admission. However, when Hardman enrolled 23 years after Laura Hereford, equal access to training had not been achieved, and women were still barred from the Academy's life drawing classes. As I have mentioned, drawing from the life, or drawing the human figure, was considered essential to formal artistic training, though Victorian society deemed it immodest for women to study the nude figure. Some also thought women lacked the intellectual capacity for high academic art, and so were less likely to forge serious and successful careers as professional artists. Why foster women's professional ambition when genius was defined as male, and women artists expected not to succeed? Like many of her sex, Hardman had to find ways around these restrictions. In her formal studies, she once again turned to drawing statues and plaster casts of classical statues, as one way in which she could improve her knowledge and understanding of the human figure. And here I want to turn to the drawing which advertised this talk, Hardman's monumental study of the wrestlers. This large drawing was probably made during her first year at the RA schools. Measuring 63 centimetres high and 93 centimetres wide, the drawing depicts the wrestlers, an undated plaster cast in the RA collection, made after a much admired Roman marble sculpture in the Uffizi collection in Florence. When Sir Joshua Reynolds, the first president of the Royal Academy, gave his 15 infamous lectures, known as his discourses on art, he singled out this sculpture. He claimed, "The group of boxers is a remarkable instance. They are engaged in the most animated action with the greatest serenity of countenance." In 1838, another celebrated Royal Academician, John Flaxman, praised the work in his lectures on sculpture as, I quote, "the greatest muscular display in violent action." Hardman's attempt at capturing this complex pose resulted in a painstakingly intricate drawing. She astutely manipulated the crumbly charcoal medium to create a diverse range of fluid and precise grey to black lines, forming the outline of the sculptural figures. To achieve the shading, particularly in the taut muscles, Hardman stroked or flattened the charcoal with a stump of paper or leather rather than using her finger, and employed stippling to achieve the carefully smooth tone. As charcoal does not contain a binding agent, Hardman used a high-quality wove paper as her support. This provided much-needed texture and prevented smudging. Though Hardman's source was a 19th century plaster cast, her resulting drawing is a sophisticated dynamic work that demonstrates her proficiency in rendering the most complex of male muscular configurations. Throughout the latter half of the 19th century, women students repeatedly but unsuccessfully petitioned the RA's all-male General Assembly to be allowed to study from the semi-draped figure. In her first year of study, Hardman was one of the 64 female students and 26 women artists that signed this petition to that end. The petition, which you can see on your screen and is currently displayed in the Tate Britain exhibition, reads, "We beg to lay it before your notice that almost all of us rely on the profession which we have chosen as a future means of livelihood, and that therefore a class which is considered essential to the training and success of male students must equally be so to us." Unfortunately, this was to no avail, and once again, the petition was rejected. Undeterred, several drawings made in this period reveal that Hardman was determined to pursue her study of the nude figure through extracurricular classes outside of the RA schools. Study of a standing female nude is quite different in style, material, and medium to Hardman's highly finished Academy drawings. In this work, perhaps to maintain her and her model's sense of propriety, she depicts a full-length female nude from behind, her forearms pressed against the wall, her arms raised to head height. The handling of this nude is quick and spontaneous. There is a distinct lack of stippling. The side of the charcoal stick has been used to rapidly create tone in the background. This work feels less like a demonstration of Hardman's ability to master the art of drawing, and more of a rapid exploration of the imperfect but real human body. A closer look and feel of this wove paper reveals that Hardman used a lighter weight, cheaper support for these sketches. Pinpricks pierced into the corners of the paper reveal that she pinned them to a suitable surface, perhaps to use as preparatory studies alongside her formal schoolwork. This and other nude drawings from this period hint at Hardman's extracurricular classes, implying that, like many of her fellow female students, she had access to models beyond the RA school walls. This was not unusual. Many women artists sought life drawing classes elsewhere, secretly, in the homes and studios of fellow women artists and their families, or by studying at the more liberal ateliers on the continent. The RA Life School continued to exclude women until 1893. And even after their eventual admission, classes were still segregated between men and women. Rather than proceed to the life school with her male peers, Hardman spent the ensuing 5 years at the RA, so from 1884 to 1889, in the Ladies' Painting School. There she produced highly finished portraits, often of women, all fully dressed. I should add that she continued to excel. In 1884, she won a silver medal for the black and white drawing you can see there of a sharply defined head and shoulders portrait of a young woman, which she notes was drawn from the life. Minnie Jane Hardman graduated from the RA schools in 1889. It was not until 1893, 20 years after women students first submitted their first petition, that women students were finally granted permission to study the partially draped model. By this date, the dominance of the RA was being challenged by more liberal art schools, such as the Slade School of Art in nearby Bloomsbury. Founded in 1871, the Slade offered men and women equal training opportunities from the outset, and generations of women artists such as Gwen John, who we'll be hearing about in our next talk, Edna Clark Hall, Evelyn de Morgan, and Ursula Tyrwhitt came to make up 2/3 of the student body. The RA schools, which did not completely abolish gender segregation until 1903, appeared increasingly old-fashioned in comparison to their progressive counterparts. Unfortunately, very little is known about Minnie Jane Hardman's professional life after her studies. In 1892, she took up a studio in Camden with fellow student Edith Martineau, and both artists turned to the relatively accessible medium of watercolour painting in an attempt to earn a living and carve out careers as professional artists. Though the RA dismissed watercolour painting as a lower genre than painting in oils, many women artists worked in this medium, capitalising on the fact that it required less equipment and could be practised almost anywhere. Hardman's watercolours from this period are picturesque landscape scenes. The formal qualities are akin to the country scenes by Helen Allingham, which likely appealed to urban consumers who yearned for images of a rural England. In 1893, Minnie Jane married the shipping clerk Henry Hardman, and after the birth of her son Wilfred 1 year later, she dropped almost entirely off the historical record. Marriage and motherhood very likely meant that Hardman had to devote some of her time to her domestic responsibilities, bringing up her son and managing the home. And I shouldn't have said some of her time then, I should have said all of her time. With this in mind, her drawings made at the RA schools take on even more significance, providing a rare insight into the training of a woman artist whose work and early career has been almost entirely forgotten. This corpus of academy drawings at the university reveals that though Minnie Jane Hardman's experience at the RA schools was limited because she was a woman, she was deeply committed to pursuing an artistic education to the fullest degree, even if that meant she had to take instruction beyond their prestigious walls. Minnie Jane Hardman's inclusion in Tate Britain's exhibition is a really fantastic opportunity for audiences beyond Reading to engage with her work and the work of her fellow female peers. Ideally, the exhibition will encourage further research on her life and work, including the years after she graduated from the RA in 1889. Was she ever able to continue earning a living as a professional painter after she had her son? Did she continue to publicly exhibit her work? Was she ever able to run her own studio again? This talk has given you a whistle-stop tour through her early years, but I hope with time we're able to piece together more of her career and trace more of her oeuvre. So I want to end this talk tonight with this portrait, which came to the University of Reading with the Minnie Jane Hardman collection of drawings in 1992. This year, with thanks to the painting's conservator Alison Seed, we were able to undertake a conservation examination of the painting, using a UV light to gain a closer look at the work. We were absolutely delighted to discover that UV light revealed the monogram MJS in the lower right corner of the painting. It seems plausible, given the age of the sitter and the depiction of the palette and paintbrush, that this is a self-portrait made by Minnie Jane before her marriage. Unfortunately, the painting is in rather fragile condition, and so over the next couple of years, we hope to launch a fundraising campaign to help conserve this painting. In doing this, it will allow us to gain a rare glimpse into Minnie Jane Hardman's painting technique, which has largely been impossible to date because so few of her paintings survive. Conserving the portrait will also allow us to further explore the ways in which Hardman portrayed herself during this exciting and probably extremely hopeful time in her early professional career. However, what is clear from this self-portrait is that, even in its relatively poor condition, we can see that Hardman is exploring her identity as an artist. Her head is tilted, looking straight at the viewer, the tools of her profession, hard-earned, clutched in her hand. Thank you very much.